You got a great column on MLB.com about what you deem as the 7 most unexpected moves so far this offseason. We're not going to go through every one, but let's start here with the Cincinnati Reds. They gave Mike Moustakas, I think it's the largest free agent signing in organization history.
Yeah, and I expected the Reds to be aggressive this winter, and I picked them to win the NL Central back on like November 5th.
Wow.
Like way too early division predictions because I just thought they'd be aggressive in a winnable division, and they have been. It's just it hasn't played out exactly like I or a lot of people thought. Shogo Akiyama, of course, is their Japanese acquisition that was officially unveiled yesterday to be their leadoff hitter, and Mike Moustakas, who we did not expect them to be in the third base market officially. And now he will be a second baseman. Now, of course, he did that a bit for the Milwaukee Brewers. He played about 40 games there for Milwaukee. But this is definitely a defensive risk, even in today's age where and the Reds are among the teams who do and will shift aggressively to kind of offset any negativity associated with this move. But it's definitely not something you anticipate that Mike Moustakas, that the big deal would come as a second baseman as opposed to a third baseman. So I think there are a lot of ways the Reds could have improved their offense. I don't think Moustakas as second baseman and Akiyama from Japan were necessarily the first things you circled. It could work out for him, though, again, with the shifting and if Akiyama translates, but definitely a curious move moving forward.
Well, we have the top 10 second baseman right now coming in a week or so. Maybe Moustakas is in the top 10. We'll see. All right.
Go ahead.
Give us another move. Unexpected move.
Yeah, well, how about Drew Pomeranz getting 4 years as a reliever? I mean, that's any reliever getting a 4-year contract is a major risk, a major potential adventure. This guy's been a reliever for about 2 months.
Yeah.
So it was obviously an extreme sample of success there for Pomeranz. He faced 106 batters as a reliever. He struck out 50 of them. So you can understand why in today's marketplace, with everybody clamoring for relief help, why the bidding would get where it got. So I don't really fault the Padres for going to that 4th year. If they didn't do it, in all likelihood, somebody else would have. But certainly that's going to be one that you watch moving forward to see where that goes. It's not a high average annual value, so it could work out well for them. But, we talk about reality TV. There's that show Married at First Sight where you marry somebody sight unseen, basically. I mean, this is not as big a risk as that, but it's pretty close. A 4-year contract to reliever based off of 2 months is a lot.
Oh, man. Now I see why we see so many things the same.
Yeah,
all right.
You guys. in an offseason where, we've kind of seen the rebirth of starting pitching kind of come at a premium here. Yeah. Jake Rizzi, he takes a qualifying offer from the Twins. Did that surprise you?
It didn't actually surprise me in the moment. This was back on November 14th when this came out. And I hate even bringing this up because I totally understand where Jake Odorizzi was coming from. I would have done the same thing in his shoes. And I think even on this program, he explained his rationale where, look, if you take the qualifying offer now, you're not subject to it next year. So he won't be tied to draft pick compensation next year. If he does in 2020 what he did in 2019, he'll be in really good shape in what is a pretty scattered market for starting pitching next winter. Now, having said all of that, knowing what we know now versus what we knew on November 14th, man, the starting pitching market really exploded in a way it hadn't necessarily in the previous 2 years. So I think he was basing his decision off the last couple winners, and again, all power to him. But you look at like Dallas Keuchel is a great example where Keuchel got an average annual value for the next 3 years, similar to what Odorizzi will get with this qualifying offer. And pitchers get hurt, so he's at risk going into 2020. That his market could regress, and maybe he could have cashed in this winter. But again, that's all hindsight, but it is a move that you look back on now and wonder if he's kicking himself a little bit because in light of where the starting pitching dollars went.
Yeah, but you know what? I look at it this way too, Anthony. Of all, we've been talking about guys opting out, not opting out. The pitchers opt out. It seems to be the one part of the market of our game that is immune to the age. They put an age barrier on position players. That has not happened with pitchers. So if he goes out and pitches like he can, I don't think anybody's saying, well, now he's 32, he's old. That's not happening with the pitching market. And so maybe it'll work out for him. I'm just throwing that.
Yeah, it might. And he won't be tied to the draft pick compensation next year. That's no small thing.
Yeah, and that'll help.
The only thing I would say though is maybe he could have got more money from the Twins. They wouldn't have had the draft pick issue in retaining him, and they still probably have money that they could have spent or should spend on pitching. So maybe he could have gotten a better deal staying put.
All right. Of all the money the White Sox have spent this offseason, Jose Abreu is the signing that kind of makes you go, hmm?
Well, just because the total composition of the roster now as we know it. So this is one of those where I think it's pretty clear when you look industry wide, they bid more with their heart than their head. And I can't fault the team for that. He means so much to that clubhouse, to that
Yep.
community. The fans love him. I get all of that. So they extended the qualifying offer to him. He rightly took it. He was the RBI king in the American League last year, but they used to say money lies in RBI. And not so much anymore. Money lies in WAR and OPS plus and weighted runs created plus, et cetera. And he didn't fare as well in those scales as he had a few years ago. First 3 or 4 seasons after he came over from Cuba, he's regressed a bit offensively. So they kind of bet on him, progressing offensively in the year 2020 to justify what became a 3-year commitment. They ripped up the qualifying offer. They rewrote the terms. They extended him. And on the one hand, it's good because they lowered the 2020 in structuring that contract. The 2020 commitment to him is about $11 million. So that's not a major deal. But now they've also gone out and signed Edwin Encarnacion. So now you have 2 first base DH types, not a lot of flexibility in the day-to-day lineup. So I love what the White Sox have done. This is just the one element overall in their offseason. This is just the one element of it that I find maybe a little curious. Was that the best allocation of money? Because I'll be curious to see where like the Nick Castellanos and Marcell Ozuna contracts end up on an average annual value basis. I think they could end up comparable to what they gave Abreu in this 3-year extension. And again, he's a bat first player at a time where his skill set isn't valued quite to this level that they're paying him.